The year 2020 has been a year of change. Global changes have included COVID-19 pandemic, which has resulted in us all having to change our ways, especially with traveling on a global scale. Cutting down air traffic has bound many to their place when the regulations came. The world is not as small or open anymore as it used to be. On a regional scale, there have been wildfires and other natural catastrophes. In societies, some people have demanded rights that they should have by default, more visibly than in years, and there have been demonstrations and confrontations in many places around the world. Individually, people have also gone through changes. Some have lost or quit their job, some found a new one. Some have faced economic challenges and some have overcome them. Relatives, family members and friends have passed away and babies have been born. Relationships have been broken and new have been formed. We haven't been able to see some people important to us physically, but we've been able to connect to them and many others via technology. Children have had to do learning outside of school context and stay away from their important social groups. Adults have had to learn working from home, some meanwhile helping their children in education. We all have faced changes of some kind this year, big or small. We face changes normally also, but this year it has been more rapid, more serious, and more visible, and more in number and ways. My name is Jani Kontkanen and you are listening to Mitä pelataan podcast. This series is called Paragons of Change. It's a series of interviews with people from board gaming sphere whom I've noticed going through changes in recent times. We talk about change and what they have changed in their lives. By default, we do not claim we state facts. We only talk from our own points of view and our opinions. As the discussion might take a negative note at times, we try to finish with a positive, by giving you a top 9 list of games. The topic of the list has been chosen by the guest, and we will have a battle of the lists after the episode airs in my social media channels. You, dear listener, are encouraged to comment and vote on the lists to see which one of us did better. The award is pride and fame among the small listener base this podcast has. Now, let's invite our Paragon for today. This time in the Paragons of Change series we have our 12th guest, Jeremy Holmes from Blueback Pinkback. Welcome, Jeremy.
Welcome, thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me, and if people for some reason don't know who you are, can you tell them who you are and what do you do?
I think there's a lot of reasons folks may not know who I am, honestly, but I am one of the co-hosts of the Blue Peg Pink Peg board game podcast, along with my good friends Rob and Christina, and occasionally our fourth and host emeritus Patrick Kelly, and we talk about board games, relationships, and the interaction between the two. So a lot of our focus is, certainly board game reviews and the experience of playing them, but also when we can, the ways that games influence the way our families interact, the way that they influence our relationships, or how we use board games to kind of keep people together and further relationships and grow relationships.
Yeah, I've been listening to your podcast for years and you're one of my favorite podcasts, and at some point you left the podcast and then you came back, and I was a bit sad when you went, because I thought that now there's no voice of reason, there are just three crazy people discussing, no one is telling them to calm down. But you came back. How was your break?
At the time, I'd been on the show. It's funny, I think of myself as the new guy still, but I started the show just a little, I think over a year, its first year, and have been on, was then on for about 5 years, I think. And at the time, I was closing in on getting remarried. My daughter was getting older, and things like this take time, and it's a lucky thing that we get to do on the show, and the work that we put in it is something that we certainly appreciate and are happy to do, but it's still a lot of time. And so it was, what was happening was that it was really getting really difficult to balance all the stuff that was going on. And so particularly because at the time I was still living, my now wife and I were still living in separate households. And so, managing 2 households and 3 kids and the whole thing was a lot of work. So it just made sense to take a break and focus on making sure my relationship with my daughter Penelope was doing what it needed to do, and to focus on Tara. And over the course of that year, we got engaged, moved in together, added a huge game room and stuff onto our house. And when everything settled down, it sort of made sense to come back.
You begin your builder career then.
Yeah.
Did you build the house, or did you just renovate the game room? I don't remember.
Yeah, we what we did was we had combined households into Tara's house. And so we did a renovation where we added on new bedroom space and things like that, because she has 2 kids, I have 1, but there's no way that 5 people were going to live in her house. So I was lucky enough to be able to squeeze a nice game room and a library out of that work. To be clear, I did not do this. These were professionals, though. I do blame them.
Aren't you professional?
Absolutely not. I don't want anyone to get the opinion that I know what I'm doing. But it is kind of funny because I watched them work, because we were living in the house while the addition was being put on. And when I recently undertook this greenhouse building project that listeners of the show will have heard me talk about before, building a greenhouse for my wife, I used the skills I learned from watching them to help me get started. It turns out that's not enough. I'm not very good at it. Watching someone build something is very different from being taught to build a thing. So, but I guess I learned a little bit, and we got that space out of there, and got the family combined, and things settled down, and I guess I got a very lovely game room out of it. So that's where, like, for the show now, we play in the game room, and we have a little studio at Rob and Christina's that we record at.
That sounds really good. Is the greenhouse ready now? You've been spamming Twitter for weeks.
Yeah. Well, as of, I think literally 5 minutes before you and I started talking, Patrick climbed down from the roof after having put the last of the roof panels on it. So it is a whole building with walls and roof, and it needs some work on the inside. But we're expecting snow here in Virginia in about 3 days, so this will be a good test. And I cannot thank Patrick enough, because I am terrified of heights. And he was climbing up on top of this very shoddily assembled roof contraption, hammering and nailing and screwing things in, and was fearless about it. So I came out and told him, I gotta go in and get on the podcast guest, and he said, well, I'm done, and climbed down, and the last panel was done. So it's very exciting. As a matter of fact, when you and I are done here, I've got another hour and a half of daylight that I'm going to go out and finish doing some work on it for the evening.
That's actually great. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. That's my wife's, as she says, next Christmas, next birthday present is building this thing.
Do you have lots of snow and for a long time there in Virginia?
We used to get a lot more, but over the past couple of years, our winters have gotten very, very mild. So today, Patrick and I, or actually this whole weekend, we've been working in T-shirts in the middle of December, which is very unusual. And now, it's I don't know, high 60s, low 70s Fahrenheit here, and it'll be snowing on Wednesday. So
that's interesting.
it's weather. The we live in like this valley, this weird mountainous valley, and so it does weird things with weather patterns sometimes. But it's nice. It's nice when we can get snow. And I grew up in California, which is not at least the area I lived was not known for snow. So it's still very magical when I get to see it.
Yeah, there's only fires in California this year, at least it seems.
Yeah, I got out at the right time, apparently. Yeah, it's not. It's a rough place there now.
Yeah, and a rough year in many ways.
Yes.
We also get snow here. That's why I was wondering if you get or not.
Yeah.
We should have now 1 meter, but we have maybe 2 centimeters. We just got more snow last week, and
really?
We are supposed to get in a week, and then it will melt again. And I think I've never experienced a Christmas without snow. So let's see how it happens.
Oh, I don't know that we've ever. I think I've maybe had one in the 20 some odd years I've lived in Virginia. Over 20 some odd years I've lived in Virginia now. We may have had one white Christmas. Actually, we did, because I recall, and I hope this isn't spoiling anything for any of your listeners, but we, the night before Christmas, we went out and put reindeer footprints in the front yard in the snow. So my daughter would see reindeer having visited from Santa Claus.
That's cool.
The night before. So I do. So we had at least one snowy Christmas morning.
Yeah, we have the Christmas elves speaking from the windows to keep the children calm here.
Oh, yeah.
Saying that they're coming to check you all the time.
Yeah,
and some people might make these footprints, or maybe they ask a neighbor to come and knock on the window or something that. Creepy stuff.
Yeah, it is kind of funny. Christmas is this very joyous sort of holiday, and yet it involves a whole lot of sinister figures spying on children to make sure they're behaving
like wormlings.
Yeah, it's very very Big Brother sort of stuff when you think about it.
Yeah. So you said that you married this year. This has been a very crazy year.
Yes.
All in all.
Yes, in
good and in bad, but I think this marriage is probably on the good side.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah. We joke. My wife and I got married January 11th of this year, and yes, we were married at our house. So we decided we joked that we turned our wedding into a combination open house and wedding ceremony for all of our friends, and we had 100-something people, and this now obviously that would be unthinkable, right? So we beat by about 2 months the whole onset of the COVID pandemic, and we have so many friends who have gotten married since that, and we watch people have virtual weddings, things like that, and we count ourselves very lucky having managed to get ours done early. Although Tara might say that we were dating for like 8 years, so she might say it was a little late.
That might be. So it wasn't a rushed decision. You had time to think.
As you said, I'm a very reasonable person, so I made sure I thought this all out.
Yeah. So how has it been? Did you manage to go to a honeymoon, or was everything blocked, or you are just waiting for the year to end?
Yeah, the honeymoon did fall through. We had a big plan to go down to Charleston, South Carolina, on the coast, and I have a good friend of mine here in Roanoke who is a big foodie, and as it turns out, he has had a lot of food connections in Charleston, and so he had put together like a dining itinerary for 3 or 4 days. So we had just this huge, wonderful plan, and getting a place on the beach and all these great restaurants and museums. And South Carolina, we were trying to see if we could still pull something off, even though things were closing. And like a week before we were due to leave, the restaurants started calling us and canceling our reservations and saying they were closing. and we got to the point where the Airbnb host said they were still eager for us to come and spend the money, obviously. But the beaches had all closed except to residents in South Carolina, and our Airbnb host said something along the lines of, "Well, we can like let you in and walk behind you so it looks like you're residents." So, when it got to the point where we were going to be chaperoned by our hosts at the beach, it didn't feel like a honeymoon anymore. So, we have
like the first date.
Yeah, exactly. Someone watching us, making sure we were in under curfew, that sort of thing. But so we didn't get to do any of that, so that will be postponed. But now it just means we have something else to look forward to, hopefully next year.
Yeah, that beach actually reminded me that you went on a holiday trip in the summer. I was laughing a lot when I was listening to your struggles in the water.
Yes.
And how fun you had with the kids there. And
yes,
it's probably been a good experience getting along with more children than you're used to in the same house and everything. Has it been a good experience for you, in your opinion, getting used to living in the same house with a family of 5 instead of 2?
Yeah. Well, so my first marriage, Penelope's mom, she had 2 sons. So, when we got married, I married into 2 teenage boys, and then Penelope came along. So I started at a house of 5 people. And then obviously we got divorced, and it was just Penelope and I, and obviously much quieter. But when Tara and I met, and we were sort of integrating things, and her kids were younger, I always had to remind her, like, look, I've been through teenagers already. Penelope was 12 years younger than her. Her next, the youngest of Maria's 2 boys. So, it's I guess it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, starting with 3 kids, going to 1, and now back up to 3, and getting to experience teenagers. Kids go through the whole teenage process twice now. So,
and you get to see it.
Yes. Also. Yeah, I was a little bit more prepared, but there's every teenager is a teenager in their own special way, which is often very
it's a different decade.
Yes. Yeah.
It has a huge role also, this digitalization and everything. It's so different if you think like 15 years back.
Right.
Or even less back. Everything is so different for the teenagers.
Yeah, I mean, Penelope's brothers didn't have access. I guess it's not worth going into details other than just saying the things they have access to, technology, video, TikTok, all this kind of stuff is just such a different kind of world. And it's interesting and gratifying watching kids navigate and succeed at these various new challenges, and to be concerned when they fail, because everybody does.
Yeah. So obviously you're satisfied and happy with your decision to marry again. I think in the podcast even you sound a bit happier this year, although the year has been crazy. But I don't know how, but you seem more relaxed than before you left the show first time.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I guess I don't know that I've heard that, but I guess Tara would say that she would be glad to hear that sounds like that's the case.
Yeah, and you're not even droopy anymore like earlier Rob was saying all the time. You don't even care anymore. You just say, "Oh well, I'm a droop."
So you have to own it. Yeah, that's definitely Rob's sort of contribution to. Well, we all have our part to play, and
of course.
Our role, and being a little team droops, I guess. Droopy dog is mine.
Of course. How about otherwise this year, 2020? how has it been for you? If you think like all the struggles and all the very interesting things happening, especially in the US, there has been many other things than elsewhere in the world.
Right.
You've had a very, very interesting year there over the Atlantic Ocean that other countries, people can't maybe even imagine how it's been in there.
Yeah, I often think, and Tara's British, so we inherently have someone who still sort of thinks about the United States from an outsider or an outside perspective. She always sort of feels a little bit more like she's standing out and looking in, though she's been here quite a while. So we do think a lot about, God, what does the rest of the world think about just what's going on here and how we behave. Speaking of teenagers, I often think that the United States is a little bit of a teenager. It's one of the teenage nations of the world, and we behave like that from time to time.
That's a good metaphor, actually.
Yeah. It's, I think, like everyone else, it's been difficult. I have to acknowledge, my family, we're very lucky in that our jobs haven't been compromised by the impact of COVID, and I know so many people within our industry, within the board game industry, in the world in general, have been hit hard by losing work and losing opportunities, and we've been lucky that we haven't. We've got, our family is very solid, and we largely like being around each other, and so that makes being isolated together easier to deal with. I think, as a parent, one of the things that's been very difficult is, in our case, and I know this isn't true everywhere in the world, but in our case, our kids have been doing virtual school since March. And that's been hard. The teachers aren't prepared for it. They're getting better, but they're really, it's not a skill set they have either from the technology or just how to work with kids, and it's not one I would have expected them to have. And this is a really hard age to kind of lose that structure, that externally established structure, and to be more on your own. Watching them kind of work through it. Everyone's doing fine, but it's not easy, and they're losing their social, a little bit, some of their social bonds. Those are fraying a bit. It's hard to maintain friendships over the internet. So that's probably been the hardest thing, is just to worry about what is this year, what kind of impact is this going to have on what our children are, what's going to happen with them in the next couple of years. We got Tara's son is going to college next year, so that's like, how do you go? What's it like to go to college or apply to colleges immediately out of a pandemic? So
and missed the last year in school in a way.
Yeah, it worries me a bit, is that the concern that there's a lost year in here somewhere. And I don't know. I mean, our kids they're smart kids, and they're strong kids, and they're doing fine. But as a parent, you still worry when there's this kind of upheaval. And especially when we're not exactly sure how things will play out. There's still a lot of unknown, and a parent's brain tends to go to crisis mode sometimes over things like this. You're a dad, so
but I have a young kid still, so I don't even want to think about these things yet. Have they stayed home for this long time, since March? Didn't the schools open, or how was it in there?
it is different all over the country, and even within Virginia, different counties and school districts do it differently. In our case, all of our kids' schools went 100% virtual. So, and since our kids are all 16, 17, 15, 16, 17, those upper level schools have largely stayed virtual. Some of the elementary level schools have gone back for the younger kids, but that hasn't been the case for us. But a county just immediately next door to us, they've been in school the whole time. So
That's interesting.
There's not much consistency. So in our case, they've been working or schooling from home since March. Yeah, they're due to go back at the end of January, but I don't. We're not sure if that's going to happen even.
Yeah, but that's really long break.
Yeah,
the schools were closed here for 2 months in spring, and they have been open since. But now they said that the high school should be in distance learning.
Yeah.
For maybe 3 weeks now, because the situation got worse here now.
Yeah.
But summer was really easy here. We had like 10 cases a week or something like that in the whole country.
Yeah.
But then it went crazy in autumn because people felt the need to go abroad during summer and bring it back in.
Yeah, we're seeing some big increases in COVID cases over the last couple of weeks. It's in the United States, it's largely worse now than it was in the spring when everything first started. So
yeah, it's the same here.
Yeah, but we're doing our best. We got online games. Penelope and I are doing escape room games. We're wrapping up a greenhouse so Tara can do some gardening
escape
over the winter.
There.
Yeah, exactly.
Or maybe not, some kind of horror house, as you like that theme.
Yeah.
She goes to check it out and you just put a lock and escape there.
Hopefully there won't be any creepy elves hanging around outside the greenhouse when Tara's working out there. So
that's a good plan.
Yeah. Well, how about you? I mean, I know you've got a young one, and you're a gamer, and I'm assuming that your gaming has, as a lot of us has whittled away a bit. So how have you and your family been doing?
We've been doing fine. We both work at the university, so we were told that we are not allowed to the campus for the whole spring, so we just carried the things out. We had 1 day. They gave us 1 day notice that take all the things home and work from there. Oh
wow.
Okay, so we just carried the things home and we've been working from home until now, from the midway of March. It's not very good at some point, and at some point you work too much and some point you don't work enough, and it's a bit difficult sometimes, depending on the task that you should do. Teaching is fine, but when you're supposed to write something, I feel that I can't focus as well at home as I could at the university, so that's a bit bad. But otherwise, work-wise, it's been fine, and our daughter is in kindergarten or daycare, actually, as you are supposed to call it nowadays, and the daycare is like 100 meters from us. So
oh wow, okay.
We're just taking her in the morning and then we come back home.
Okay.
One of us who wakes up goes and takes her, and then the other one probably goes and picks her up. And the daycare has been open all the time. There hasn't been any COVID cases in there. And actually the city I live in, we've been quite fortunate. We didn't have any cases in the summer at all here. But now this autumn, especially November, there's something happening. There are lots of these pilings. I mean, lots of cases in some small area here, and people are in quarantine, and I don't know. Let's see how the Christmas goes.
Yeah.
But as far as the gaming goes, we have our board game club at the university, and that was closed in March. Then it opened at the end of August, I think, and we were gathering there with a 10 people limit, and we had to wear masks.
Yeah.
And it closed now 1 month ago, I think. a person came there on Thursday and said that next week you won't have this club, that we will close this tomorrow.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And now we are doing it on distance using Discord and playing on somewhere, board game arena mostly.
Yeah.
Because the people here in the game club, we don't really use tabletop simulator.
Yeah.
That would be the best way to do it, but yeah, it costs, and the students especially don't really want to pay for that and learn it.
That's fair. Yeah.
But board game arena has been good. I'm mostly playing with my game group and then some other people from abroad who I could not play with, like you and Rob and Patrick and some other people from other podcasts.
Well, I mean, we played probably the longest game of K-List I've ever played in my life on Board Game Arena. So that was crazy.
It took so long because every single action you do at once, and then you wait and then again a small action.
Yeah.
And you probably played the best game of Lewis and Clark you've ever played in Board Game Arena also.
Yes.
You said that I'm the best in this game, I will win, and what happened? No, maybe not. Maybe you said that you didn't remember how it works.
I had learned it actually at the beginning of the pandemic. For some friends of mine, we went hot and heavy into some Board Game Arena stuff every night because everyone was like just itching to do some online gaming, and I learned Lewis and Clark, and then when you and I played it, I had promptly forgotten everything I had learned. So I was sort of feeling my way back through it again. So
yeah. But yeah, I noticed. Actually, when we talked with Patrick, we were talking about the City of the Big Shoulders, and he said that you and Rob might want to try it, and I sent you invitations, but it seems that Rob and you didn't want to try it.
Yeah,
so
we're
just playing it 3-player now.
I had meant to, I saw that, and the game itself is one that I'm interested. When I saw it pop up in BGA, I had been interested, but the K-List game, and we had been playing some other groups of mine. Terraforming Mars, turn-based on Steam, and we
might be long.
Yeah. So not only did it take a while, but last week Steam did an update, and then suddenly I couldn't get into the game anymore. The game was not compatible with the update, and so I had to forfeit both the games I was in after playing for like a month. So I got mad.
Ouch.
Yeah, threw a little fit, and I was like, I can't do another turn-based online game for a while.
City of the Big Shoulders is not as bad as this Kaelus. I wouldn't play Kaelus again, turn-based ever. That takes just way too long.
Yeah,
it seems to be the same case with William Attia's other game, this Spyrium.
Oh yeah,
that's also in Board Game Arena. I just started it, but it seems that it is a bit slowly advancing if people are not taking their turns. But City of the Big Shoulders works very well and is quite quick actually.
Okay.
And Patrick was telling that you would want to play Nippon also there, that you like it.
I like that one a lot.
To play that also.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very well done in Board Game Arena, that one.
I used to get on just on a random Sunday and join, whoever had a game open and just play it just for the heck of it, because I really enjoy that one.
Yeah, it's a great game and works very well.
Yeah.
The world has been changing this year a lot due to many different things. There have been some kind of global catastrophes and then lots of political issues of different kinds,
right,
especially in there. And the world has been changing and people have been changing. And what do you think about change?
Oh, well, that's a big question. So,
yeah.
I mean, obviously, change is something that happens and that you've got to embrace. I've been through, working my way through 5 kids and all of the changes that are associated with that, and my relationship changes, and all of these have been good changes, in the end. And when you're facing it at the front side, it's often very scary. But those, I think it's one thing when you're facing down small personal changes. I think the challenge this year for a lot of people, and certainly myself included, is that the changes that we're seeing are so far out of our control. Whether it's the political thing, whether it's what's happening with climate, whether it's the pandemic. I know that it's a recurring theme that I have felt and that I have heard is that, what do we do? What can I do in the face of this? And we can't. There's just a lot of things that, as an individual person, you don't really have any power to address these things. And so the struggle has been maintaining some normalcy, finding joy when you can. I think that there's some opportunities. I hate to be the kind of Pollyanna person who says there's always something good that happens, because I don't believe that's true. I think sometimes life is bad, and I think bad things happen, and there's just no avoiding it. And nothing good comes out of it, and the best you can do is endure. Which I don't. So there's the droopy dog coming back. I don't like to be a person who says that good things happen, because people have suffered, and I think it's not fair to minimize that. But that said, I do see people who are struggling to use this time to redefine something about themselves, maybe start a new job or a vocation, or revisit something in their life, an art or writing or music or board game design, something that they maybe thought that they were not going to be able to ever tackle. And this has kind of forced them into a position where they have time and opportunity to do that. So, I think change, is particularly as big as this scale, does force us or allow us maybe to think about if what we're doing is something we really want to do. But I also know that change, like I said, it's sometimes the best you can do is put your head down. Protect the people around you, hold everyone you can as close as you can, and make it through to the end. And that's fine. That's a victory, I think. And I think people should be commended for simply taking care of themselves and making it through as whole as possible when we're faced with something like this.
Also, the changes have been quite rapid this year.
Yeah.
Compared to normality or the normal situation. It hasn't been this much with this high volume or this much loudness in a way.
Yeah.
And this rapidly and this drastically and this, everything has changed really too much in a short period of time. In a way. It has been an endurance practice.
It does. It is a real struggle when you feel like you've made it past one obstacle, and then something else changes. When you're worried about being sick, and then your economic or job situation changes, and then you've got to deal with that, and then you got a wildfire in your backyard, and now you've got to deal with that. It's I don't blame people for feeling overwhelmed at this point in time.
Yeah. Do you get tornadoes there, by the way? Do they come that deep inland where you are? Because they go along the coast at least.
No, so we the worst that we get is maybe ice storms in the winter. We don't get we're far enough towards the coast and in the mountains that we don't get tornadoes. We're far enough inland that when hurricanes go up the coast, we can get bad storms, and we do get flooding. but we generally don't get the same kind of destructive sort of things that other parts of the country get. That said, a number of years ago, a very small tornado did set down in my neighborhood a few blocks away and tear up someone's tree. So that's
Okay.
That's the extent, right? So it was a baby tornado with very minimal damage.
Yeah. I actually meant hurricane, but I didn't understand. There's a difference because we just call them with one name basically here.
Yeah.
So, hurricane is the one on the sea, and tornado is the inland one. I think.
Yeah. We managed to miss both. We're far enough away from both that we certainly get the storm part of hurricanes.
Yeah.
And that's been pretty consistent. This has been one of the wettest years on record in my part of Virginia. So we're getting a lot of rain.
It seems to be the same here for some reason. We don't get any other disasters. We don't get earthquakes or anything. Fires very rarely, but not this year that much.
Yeah, so that's one thing we don't have to worry about in Virginia so much. It's horrifying weather disasters.
Maybe you should knock on wood. Something will happen.
I'll say that, and then who knows? We'll get a blizzard this week and be snowed in for.
Greenhouse will fall and everything.
Yeah,
you're jinxing it.
Yeah, if that greenhouse falls, that's it. We're not rebuilding it.
Do you think you yourself have changed during this year? If you think from the beginning of the year that you remarried with one arm and then you rebuilt yourself and...
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. I don't... Have I changed?
Yeah, have you changed?
I don't know. I don't know. Let me put it this way. I'm, my daughter's 15 and a half. We're looking at college stuff. I'm 44, which isn't old, but it's certainly in that trend. And I think that to the extent I've changed, it's just from hitting that point in one's life when one is making sure that one is where one wants to be, career-wise, certainly getting married. That was, obviously the commitment that I was ready to make. And but like I said, Tara and I have been together for many, many years. So the marriage was sort of a formality. I would say she may not agree with that. But for my part, I will say that I felt like it was a formality. It wasn't a massive milestone that marked a different way of living and of being together. So I don't know that I have that much. At least not directly inspired by how awful and bizarre this year has been, with maybe the exception. I will say this: I've mostly been a very introverted person. I've always had very small groups of friends and been very, very happy just to be mostly on my own and with a very small group of people around me. But this year has showed me that I have come to appreciate the breadth of friendships that I have formed through being on the show, through meeting folks like you, even if our experiences have all been virtual. They're nonetheless they're kinds of relationships forged that I've discovered that I appreciate and rely on more than I thought I did. So not being able to access those and be with more people, do things with conventions, just have those experiences. I guess it's been a realization that I have changed previous to this year in a way that I maybe wasn't aware of, and it's maybe brought that out, because like a lot of people, I've been very sad at not being able to connect with people as much, and I think being sad was a surprise, and it caught me off guard how much I relied on that, and that's a bit of a revelation, I guess.
You mentioned conventions. Have you attended them virtually?
I have not. And part of it, and this is, I know lots of folks who did and have had great times. But for me, it was almost not worth being disappointed by the experience, or rather, what I mean is that the folks who put on the virtual Origins and the virtual Gen Cons and so forth, and Essens, they did the best job they could, and in many cases they did amazing jobs for the speed at which they had to turn these experiences around, still undertaking these efforts to give publishers and designers a platform to show off what they were working on, and to give gamers an opportunity to still interact, learn new games. I mean, these folks did a remarkable job with the technology, with the organization involved, and so forth. And I just have enormous respect for what they did. But nonetheless, it's going to be a different experience.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it would have made me more sad to have that experience, knowing how far away it was from what I get out of conventions. And I guess I will clarify. We have these experiences, I think, and I think Rob and Christina and Patrick would all say the same thing. But we have our experience with convention is getting to meet our listeners, meet friends we haven't seen in a long time, sit down at tables and play games, talk with folks, go out to dinner, wander around hallways and have conversations. Certainly it's to play games, certainly it's to meet with publishers and get those new experiences. But it's really more, I think, for us about the people involved. For the folks who do conventions just to learn new games, they want to see what such and such a designer has put out, what such and such a publisher has put out. I think they probably had a great experience because they still got to do those things. So it's all about what you looked for in that convention experience. What it gave you, I think, would define how much you enjoyed that. So that's why for us, watching videos of interviews and gameplays and things like that was not the primary thing that I get out of the convention experience. And so I sort of didn't want to do that to myself.
Yeah, I'm actually the same, because it doesn't feel probably how it feels being really in the convention. And also it actually came into me making a decision that I'm been sitting in front of the computer all week. Do I want to do that during weekend, which is a family time in a way?
Right.
That we are trying to not work on weekends with the wife, because this university work can really drag, so that you might want to do something in the weekend or might have to, although you're not allowed to in a way.
Right.
But sometimes it might go to the weekend, and we are trying not to work on weekends, and I'm trying not to open the computer. I'm not even playing this board game arena or Yukata games. I just go in the evening, do my turns, and then don't open it until the next day.
Yeah.
So in the weekend I try to stay away from the computer.
Yeah.
And I just thought that no, I'm not sitting in front of the computer. It's not a convention. It's just time away from the others. I can wait a year.
I agree. I think that was another thing that felt like, particularly when I was working from home and the barriers or the border between am I at work, am I at home, was gone since I'm at the same place. I don't think I wanted to do that for another 16 hours or something over the course of the weekend.
Exactly.
So
my thoughts exactly.
But,
if I was working from the office, maybe then I would have popped in and something, but no.
But at the same time, the board game industry is still going, and there's still jobs that rely on it, and designers are still designing, and publishers are still publishing. So it was a hard decision, insofar as I'm always really focused on supporting people in the industry and supporting the people who make the games that we like so much. And the conventions are critically important to their business, and so hopefully we found some other ways to be supportive and helpful that didn't involve the virtual convention attendance.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out about games from elsewhere, not from the virtual conventions.
Yeah,
it's fine in my opinion, at least.
Yeah.
Actually, by the way, we agreed with Patrick that he will bring you to UK Games Expo one year, and we'll meet there.
Yeah, he was talking about that, and that would be a good excuse to get Tara to be able to come home and visit for a little while, and then we could come to the UK Games Expo. Yeah, I think that's a good plan.
I was thinking the same. It would be really good for Tara to visit home and maybe take the kids with also.
Yeah, that's a good plan.
That might be really good. Yeah. Okay, so that's a deal then.
Maybe
a
deal.
Not next year.
Done. Sealed.
But whenever it's possible.
Next time there's a game expo, we'll be there.
Yeah. I don't know if they're arranging it next year. Maybe they try to, but maybe they don't. I don't know. How about the future? What do you expect from the future? For yourself or for the world, or however you want to consider that question.
I'm not even going to try to predict what's in store for the world, other than to say that I hope that whatever is happening next, humanity faces it down with the best of us, the best parts of us, because we've seen an awful lot of the worst parts of us, I think, over the last couple years. And I think if we're going to get out of this situation and recover, we're going to have to work pretty hard as a species, and be more kind to each other. So I don't know if that's something I expect. I hope that is what we do. For me, I think one of the things that's facing me down is that. My daughter turns 16 in a few months, and Tara's oldest son will be in college next year. Our daughters will be in college in 2 years. So we're looking at some pretty big changes to our life in the next couple of years. We're hoping that next year things return to normal a bit, so we can travel and get as much time in with our kids as we can, and explore. I don't know. I think that those are certainly things that are facing us down. I will simply be happy if things calm down enough that I don't have to kind of wake up screaming every day a little bit, and kind of focus on reclaiming some normalcy, I guess. I don't know if that's a good answer to your question.
Yeah, it's a good answer.
I just try to be ready for whatever happens next, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. Ready for whatever happens.
Yeah.
Because you can't know, like you couldn't know 1 year ago what is happening.
Yeah, if you had told me 2 years ago that we'd all be wearing masks, we wouldn't be seeing our friends, we'd have murder hornets and wildfires.
You have those as well.
Yeah.
Those hornets are very interesting. I've been reading from the news that it's a bit late there if you don't take any action. So.
Yeah, we've seen some, but it's just like everything that's happening is out of the headlines of an apocalyptic novel.
Or from a Bible.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit of Revelations action here. But I guess I'd say that if we're in the middle or at the early parts of the end of the world, it is way more dull. Like, there are these moments of utter terror, but mostly it's really boring.
Are you disappointed?
Until the next horrifying thing happens, there's just a lot of just waiting and being tired. So,
did you expect an old one or something to come up?
Yeah, I expected a little bit more brimstone and the sky cracking open and the light from other worlds pouring through or something like that. And who knows? It's not over yet. We've still got a couple more weeks of 2020. And 2021 doesn't have to be better. It could try to one up 2020. So I'll take, to be clear, I will take a really boring apocalypse over a more exciting one. Just to get that on record.
Do you have anything to add to this discussion? Or should we move on to the top 9 lists?
Oh, I could. I'm certain I could wax on and fill time, but I guess if I were to say anything else, it would be that it's been an incredibly hard year, for everyone, for all over the world. And this is definitely a year where, if anybody's learned anything, it's how we can be kinder to ourselves. Because people are failing and falling down, and it's inevitable, and it's fine. It's absolutely fine. And certainly, in the U.S., Tara will talk about this, we're very much go get better. This is an opportunity, not a challenge. Da 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 da. And there's a real pressure, I think, to constantly succeed and to constantly improve in some way. And I just don't think that has been feasible. And I hope that people are not as hard on themselves in this particular time of change. And maybe don't feel the pressure on themselves to change, that this doesn't have to be this thing forced on them, but that we do your best and we'll be okay, and everyone is having the same awful experience you have in some way, and everyone is struggling. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm not leaving you on a high note here. But it's okay, because it hasn't been a high note, but we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's good. It's good to move on to the happy.
Let's talk about some other a much happier theme and topic, right?
Yeah. So this time we have a top 9 list chosen by Jeremy, and it's a horrible one because the theme is horror, creepy,
right.
or tension. At least that's what I've written down.
Yes.
Why did you choose this difficult topic?
For whatever reason, I've always been a fan of scary stuff. I've always read scary novels. H.P. Lovecraft in particular is a favorite of mine, and there's something about the world of horror, of not quite understanding what's out there, what's hiding behind the corner, what's behind the closed door, always intrigued me. And I think it's because, I like, and I think people who like this stuff enjoy the sense of being scared in a safe way. So horror games is a tricky one because it's not very horrific generally.
Yeah.
But there's certainly games with monsters and kind of horrific themes, and so I thought it'd be fun to play around with something in that space.
This was really difficult for me. I had to go. I mean, I couldn't pick the games easily. I had to go to Board Game Geek and see the category horror and see what's in there.
Yeah,
that helped a bit because I don't own many of this style of games. And this is probably the first list so far that I don't own all of the games.
Oh wow!
I have 5 games on the list that I have owned at some point or have played at some point, but I don't own them anymore.
I think so. It's funny that I proposed this topic, and then when I actually got into coming up with the top 9 list, I found I had to maybe stretch my own rules a little bit to make things fit. So all of the games that I've got on my list, I do own, but people, when they hear me talk about them as a horror game, might be surprised. So, I guess we'll see where that goes, and then people can write me challenging emails or Board Game Geek messages all they want, and we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah. How did you arrange your list? Is the number 1 the one that you like the most, or
it's 9. The game I guess at the bottom of the list, number 1 is my favorite in this theme, and the way that I arranged these in the end was not necessarily my least favorite to most favorite, but when I put that word tension in there as a way to think about horror games, the way I've organized these are the games that within the horror theme I find invoke the least amount of tension to the ones that invoke the most amount of tension. So, in the same way that if you're watching a scary movie, that the moment where you're, is there a ghost behind the corner, or the protagonists are making their way down the dark stairs into a basement, invoke those moments of tension. That's sort of the way that I've gone about it.
Yeah, I did actually the same.
Okay.
My number 1 is the one that I feel is the most tense game during the gameplay.
Yeah.
But all of my games are not really horror. But
yeah.
I went with the tension first, and then I checked I decided that these games I feel like there's a lot of tension. Then I checked the category from Board Game Geek. I added games, and I removed some that are clearly not tense or horrific enough.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this will be interesting to see what we both did in this within this
I have
theme.
a few that are not horror
Yeah.
games. At least 2 for sure are not horror games. But others might be somehow.
Yeah.
Touching the horror feeling. Do you have any honorable mentions?
Oh God, probably too many to mention. What I'll do is some of these games there was maybe some competition for something within a particular space. So maybe when I get there, I can talk about why I decided on this particular game over something else in my collection that I've played that's kind of the same feeling. Or evokes the same feeling as whatever I ended up settling on.
Yeah. I have some games that I've used in earlier lists, and I try not to reuse the games. I have Arkham Horror 2nd edition and Xenoswift Onslaught and Mansions of Madness 2nd edition and also 1st edition. They're that kind of games I've used earlier. They would have definitely been on this list.
Yeah.
And Xenoswift especially, it would have been maybe number 1 or 2. It is so tense. Same with Arkham Horror when it goes to the end and it's up to one roll. And
Right.
Arkham Horror is really difficult with the rolls. So.
Right. Yeah, well, spoiler alert, you will probably see some of those on my list. So it'll be fun to talk about your experience with them when I get there.
Yeah. One of the most horrible games I didn't add to the list is Kimball. That's the Finnish name for trouble.
Oh, okay.
It's a horrible game.
You know,
but that would have been stretching a bit too much.
I will say, now that you mentioned that, the one that I thought about adding was Jenga.
This is really tense. That's a good pick. That would have been totally fun.
And in the end, I tried to still stick with something of a horrific theme, although there is a role-playing game called Dread that uses the Jenga tower as its success and failure mechanism.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, so maybe that will be my honorable mention. I think Jenga inherently, but in some of its applications, it is certainly maybe one of the most tense games out there, if not the most tense game out there.
It sounds really good. The longer the game goes, the more difficult it goes.
Yeah,
it sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it's a neat game. It's a neat idea behind it, and at first, when people are making decisions, they take them very lightly. And as the game goes on, they're like, oh man, we shouldn't have done that because now look how hard things are later when we really need it to be easy, and now it's not. So it's funny to watch that revelation on your players' faces when they're going through that experience.
That sounds awesome. Wow. Anyway, we go the list from 9 to 1, so that 9, 9, 8, 8, 7, 7, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And we've had the thing with all the guests that the guests can be the announcers.
Okay.
So you can try to be Erik Sammerer or whoever you think is a good announcer. I think he is good. But so you announce the number and go on with your pick for that number, and then it's my turn. And we can comment on each other's games and let's see what happens.
Okay. Okay, well then we will start with number 9. I don't know if that's a good Erik Sammerer or not, but it's about as deep.
You do you.
It's as smooth and deep as I'm gonna get. So my number 9.
You don't have to be Erik Sammerer. Be you. How you would announce.
Number 9. My number 9 is, and this is where I'm already sort of challenged with the horror theme, but Australia. This is the Martin Wallace Cthulhu game that is the sequel of sorts, I guess, to Study in Emerald. I really like. Obviously, it's got a mythos setting. It's this idea that it's in Australia some years after or decades after this whole Victorian setting for the Cthulhu stuff in Study in Emerald, and now the Great Old Ones and all the various monsters are coming back. But what I find that's funny about it is that it's a train game. It's Wallace's. It's another one of Wallace's sort of resource collection, track laying sort of games. It's very much a Euro in that regard, and then there's a moment at the end of the game where it switches to the arrival of the Great Old One, or the big bad at the end, where all of the work you've done with your kind of train building game now pivots to this struggle against the final boss and this cosmic horror. And obviously it's my number 9 because I really enjoy the game. It's kind of silly fun. Martin Wallace is one of my favorite designers. He works in a very similar space with all of his games, and so it was just interesting to see his kind of exploration of this idea. It's obviously got the mythos, so I like anytime someone does weird things with Lovecraftian, the Lovecraftian mythos. But it still has a little bit of tension because you know that things are going to twist at the end. and you're going to have to be prepared to deal with sort of the combat element at the end of the game. So, and of course, you're fighting monsters throughout, and there are these threats that are popping up on the board that you're dealing with as you're trying to build your railroad out. That I think it's just, I don't know, it strikes me a little more on the silly side of horror, but it's definitely playing in that theme a little bit.
This is an interesting game. I haven't played this, and I haven't played Study in Emerald either.
Okay.
Both are games that I would like to try. And I like train games more than horror games, so this might be very interesting.
This would be a good crossover for you.
Yeah, and Martin Wallace is usually good.
Yeah.
His designs are usually good, not all of them, but usually.
Yeah, he's got more hits than misses by a long shot.
Yeah, that I agree with. All right, my number 9 is horror this year because this is pandemic.
There you go.
You can choose whichever version you want to. Maybe the legacies are the best intention and especially in the storyline. And there are some horror elements in the first season,
right?
Season 1, but I don't want to spoil that. But yeah, I've outplayed Pandemic. I don't like it that much, but it has tension.
Yes.
And just recently we played this Hot Zone. Is it US, North America or something? And that was really tense because you have only a small amount of cards, small amount of places, and you have to manage to heal everything before the cards end, and it was much more difficult than normal Pandemic. That was really tense.
Yeah.
But whichever version you like or don't like, but whichever you want to play, this Pandemic is my number 9. And this is horror theme because of this year.
Yeah. Hey, that's a good choice. There is, of course, the a Pandemic Cthulhu out there, which is maybe the easiest of the Pandemic games I've played. I'm with you. Pandemic is not one of my favorite games. I always feel a little beat up by it. But I did enjoy the Legacy, and I played through half of the first season. So I know a little bit of what you're hinting at.
Okay, I'm sorry if I spoiled something, but
yeah, no, I don't think
towards the end there is something.
Yeah, Rob and Christina have played through, I think, all 3 seasons at this point. So the Legacy was a much more satisfying.
Yeah, especially because of the story.
Yeah,
it works better with the story than just put it out and play. I've played it enough. I don't need to play it ever again.
Yeah, fair enough.
All right.
Well, I guess now we're going to go to number 8. My number 8, sticking kind of with a similar idea, I guess, is Fate of the Elder Gods. So this is much more of a kind of a Euro-y worker placement. Greater Than Games, Richard Launius is involved. So, you've got that Arkham Horror kind of pedigree. I like it. It's in this case, you Fate of the Elder Gods, you are the bad guys. So you are playing the cultists, and you're actually competing with other cultists to summon some kind of whoever your elder god of choice is. And it's a little higher on the list because I think it's a better game. I think it's, regardless of the theme, it's in my mind a really just a solidly designed game. It's just a lot of fun. It's pretty easy to learn, and it has some innovative elements in it. And it's got this. It's a bit of a race game, since you're working to get to your old one first, and obviously that's going to create some tension as you're working through racing against your opponents to try to get to your guy before anyone else gets to theirs. So, and I just like the game. I like the mythos stuff part of it, obviously, but I think it's a really clever and solid implementation of a good Euro within a Lovecraft horror theme.
I haven't played this either. Actually, when I was making this list, I noticed that I haven't played that many games. Like I had to include Pandemic. I don't even like the game that much. There are a few games here also that I don't really like that much.
Yeah.
But all the rest should be at least playable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not even interested in this Fate of the Elder Gods. I don't think that I might not like it. I heard you talk about it in the podcast, I think, earlier, but it didn't interest me much. Australia was much more interesting than this one.
I think that's fair. I think the Fate of the Elder Gods, while I think the mechanics are solid, you still sort of have to buy into the theme, and you've got to be interested in that part of it, or else the mechanics aren't going to really make much sense, and they're not going to be very satisfying. So this one is much more heavily horror thematic, and particularly mythos thematic. If you're not a Lovecraft person, you're going to get less out of it. Australia, you can get away with not being as familiar with the mythos, and it's probably gonna resonate more with you.
Yeah. My number 8 is Dead of Winter, and I'm not a fan of this game. I mean, I don't like the forced traitor mechanism in the game. I mean, not the traitor mechanism, but I don't like it that you're forced to screw up the others to win the game. I don't like it. They should have found out some other way to do it, or you should just take it out. It's there just to make tension and people think that there is a traitor, even if there is not a traitor.
Right.
I understand why they did it, but I didn't like it. I've only played this 2 times, but I don't know if I need to play it again. But it is tense, especially if you have this kind of a task that you should screw up the others, and you don't want to be thrown outside. And it's a bit, there's tension and there's zombies, so probably it's horror.
Yeah. Well, I will say this one was one I considered. I'm a fan. As a matter of fact, I have all the expansions, including the Warring Colonies expansion, so that you can have not only fight zombies but fight each other. I have not played it yet. And as a matter of fact, to be honest, I owned it for a year or so and only recently punched it. So it's been that long since I've touched it. I get I absolutely understand what you're saying, and it can be kind of frustrating. I find it thematically satisfying, but again, you kind of have to buy into that world and want to play a game like that. There's lots of other co-ops and so forth that don't do what that's doing, that are probably better for a lot of folks.
Yeah, but I like the crossroads system a lot. I'm really waiting for this pandemic to be over. I want to play this Forgotten Waters. Yeah. But I haven't bought it yet because why would I buy it to the shelf? The timing of that game was really, really, really bad.
Yeah.
It came at the very wrong moment, a 6-player game.
Right.
Yeah. But I like the crossroads system.
Yeah, we've played a little bit of Gen 7 with the crossroads system, which is very good. This is, I guess, a little exclusive because we'll talk about this on the show probably it'll be a couple more episodes before we get to it, but we're going to spend a bunch of time talking about the way the story falls out in that game. But it's a better co-op in that regard. It's got a stronger narrative, no traitor. But Dead of Winter is a solid choice for the theme. So
I think Gen 7 has a bit too depressive theme for me for some reason.
Oh, really?
I heard about it in some podcast, but I don't remember what, and I felt like maybe it was Shut Up and Sit Down like a long time ago when I was still listening to them, and I felt that I won't like it.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a very particular kind of story. I've been pleased with how it has played out, but we haven't got all the way through, so it could end up being very disappointing. But thus far, it's been a good time.
Yeah, and we'll hear later more about that.
Well, I guess moving on, my number 7 is, as I hinted, Arkham Horror, and
Which version?
The second edition. I have not played the newest edition, although I understand it streamlines a lot. Folks really enjoy it. I've got a soft spot in my heart for the second edition. It is probably one of the first designer board games I ever played, just because of the theme. And so I saw it, I was like, I think this should be interesting, and opened the rule book and was a little overwhelmed. I own everything,
that rule book is horrible.
Yeah, well,
it is really bad, especially as a reference. It is really bad.
And when you add in all of the expansions, and then you've got multiple things going on, it can be a bit of a mess. And but it's kind of like what you said earlier. It's definitely within the theme. You're struggling the whole game. You're constantly, up against odds that are greater than you. Monsters are spawning out of portals. With some of the expansions, portals are moving around the board. You're trying to get to the resource you need and help out your opponent or help out your partner. And then, if you're lucky, you'll stop the Great Old One. Otherwise, you're in a battle for your life that's just all about dice rolling. And you've if you're like me, you've been playing the game for 6 hours at this point. And it's all going to come down to the roll of the dice. So I don't play it often, but I do enjoy it.
This is one of the first games that I played with my wife, and we really like it. And this is my favorite Arkham Horror also. I have heard from about the new edition that it is like on rails, that you don't have this decision space as you do in this one. Here you can really choose where you go, and then all the time curse the dice because they are always against you, and when you are blessed you become cursed the next turn, and everything is so difficult. I really like it that it's a long game. You have to make it an event, and it can be up to the last die roll against the old one if you win it or not. And that is really great. This is my favorite Lovecraft game.
Yeah,
I think I've even seen.
It's not my favorite, so we'll get to my favorite later. But it's definitely up there.
All right, my number 7 is probably a game that not many people have heard about it. It has 70 ratings in Board Game Geek, and this is Escape the Nightmare. This is a small card game. It says playtime 1 to 15 minutes. Yes, that's accurate. You can lose on the very beginning. It's a cooperative game where you trade cards with others and you try to gain a set. It's been a few years since I played it, but all the cards have some kind of a thing that you have to do if something happens. It might tell you to sing all the time, or you can speak only using certain words, and there are nightmares in the cards, and you're seeing dreams about them, and you cannot share any information of your hand, and then it's like this. What is it? Mountains of Madness or something like that. Yeah. Where you get this madness that you have some restrictions. This is only that in a card play.
Yeah.
And they might have some kind of, like for example, you have to have one hand in front of your mouth when you talk, and you have to accept the next trade that is offered to you. This is crazy. You would like it, by the way, in your game group. You would love this with Christina and Rob and Patrick. You would roll on the floor laughing. Well, this is exactly to you.
I would tell you, we have played this. I think we played it pretty early when it came out. I think we may have even got a prototype or early release.
Yeah, this was really cheap Kickstarter. It was like €10 or something like that. Did you like it?
Well, I'll say so. My experience of it is I played with my kids. So I don't. Rob and Christina and I didn't play, or we didn't play for the show. So I played with the family. The family experience was not great. We did not enjoy it. Or the kids in particular did not enjoy it. Now.
Yeah.
The kids don't like the kind of high pressure, that kind of high pressure experience that you see in that game, where you've got to remember, what is the thing you're supposed to be doing, and there's a lot of chaos happening at the table.
Yeah, that's the whole game.
Yeah, that's not one of my favorite. It can work sometimes.
Yeah.
But for me, it's a very narrow range of a game that I'll enjoy that experience.
Yeah.
So I didn't like Mountains of Madness in the end. I tried it a couple times, but I gave it a fair shot, but I did not like it. And Escape the Nightmare, I wasn't really a fan of. Now, if I had played, with the other folks on the show, we might have had a better experience.
Mm-hmm.
But I was also very focused on family games. I think at the time, maybe more so then than I am now, and just things that'll get the kids, and they were younger. So it was a particular moment in time when we played that one.
But I agree, this is really group dependent and situation dependent. You might not like this. I mean, I've rated it only 5 in Board Game Geek because of that. I will only play it in a certain situation with a certain group.
Right.
But with a certain group, and let's say that you are just sitting and have nothing to do, and you open this deck, it's craziness. And when you don't take it seriously, it's fun.
Yeah.
But it can also very easily flop.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this is tense when you play it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, anytime you've got everyone at the table kind of shouting and trying to pass cards around, and then limited in some way, singing a song, being blind, whatever is going on. Yeah, it's definitely very tense.
Right.
Okay, well, so my moving on to number 6. This I picked Winter Tales. This is are you familiar? You heard of Winter Tales?
I've heard the name, but I don't know what it is.
And I think this one went under the radar. So Winter Tales, it's a horror themed in that it's a storytelling game that's set in a very dark fairy tale world. That's got characters from Alice in Wonderland and Snow White and Wizard of Oz, but very sort of dark gothic versions of them. And in the end, it's a storytelling game. So you're going to have 2 teams. One is the bad guys, so the big bad wolf, Geppetto the toy maker, the Queen of Hearts, those kinds of figures. And the other are the good guys, who are the rebellion. And you're moving around to various locations on a board, and you're doing all of your actions through a storytelling mechanism that's inspired by this deck of cards that the designer's kids drew. So just very abstract pictures, sketches, lines, completely. I mean, think something like Dixit, but caveman drawings. And these cards are your resources that allow you to do things. So you've got to manage them very well. But moving from a location to a location, you need to play a card, and then you describe how whatever you interpret that picture on the card to be, it builds a narrative for how you're moving to a location. When you get into a battle with another character, those cards come into play. And you sort of describe how the battle's going round by round, and you're spending these cards out to do it. And then as the game goes on, there's these quests that pop up, and what you're trying to do is complete your own quests and stop the other side from getting theirs. And at a certain point, whoever's essentially completed more quests will win, and they will rule over the fairy tale world. The gothic sort of implementation of fairy tale characters and these children's book characters, I think are just great. The art is amazing, but it is a storytelling game, so it's a narrative game. you can't just play a card and do a thing. You have to play a card and then weave a story collectively with the group. And as a result, the story gets it's very dark, can be, more or less horrific, depending on who's telling and sort of how the cards inspire you to go. But the tension comes about because you are weaving a group narrative, and as people complete their quests, it shifts sort of which side is winning, and the bad guys are trying to get to their thing first because now it's going to make it harder for the good guys to do their next thing, and vice versa. And then there's a little bit of a race to get more stories told, essentially, than your opponents. It plays pretty well in a group, but you do have to have some folks who are comfortable with essentially improv storytelling. But it's definitely a dark world, and I think that's what appeals to me about it, is the idea of Alice in Wonderland is the leader of an underground rebellion against these horrific bad guys in this quasi sort of steampunky kind of world. I had seen it at Gen Con many years ago, fell in love with it, and then I don't think I ever really saw anybody talk about it ever since then. There's been no support or new characters or expansions. I don't even know if it's a game you can find easily anymore. But, it comes out generally a couple times a year at my house. Just for some storytelling fun.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on Board Game Geek, and this really seems to be under the radar. And in the geek market, you can buy a new copy of the game for $10 if you're in the US. In Europe, a bit more expensive, but this is a Fantasy Flight game.
Yeah.
Did they screw up with the marketing, or what happened?
It's
2012.
I don't know. I don't know if something was competing. I remember I saw it in the Fantasy Flight kind of massive area at Gen Con. I sat down. I played it with a big group of people. They had a big presence. I had a great time. I think maybe, it is a storytelling game, and that's only going to have a fairly narrow appeal, particularly for Fantasy Flight, who does big games, right? And this is never going to be a big game. And so maybe in the end that just wasn't enough for them. But if you can get a copy for $10, then go do that. If you're a storytelling person, you should go do that.
No, it looks really cheap, at least in Geek Market.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen this. I had heard the name, but I didn't connect it to any visual image. So but it looks really cool. Yeah, different.
It's definitely it's unique, and again, gorgeous art, an interesting implementation, and certainly again a sort of a horrific game.
All right, my number 6 is a game that I've played in Yukata.de. That doesn't really give the theme true, but it gave the tension through, and this is Fearsome Floors by Friedemann Friese. And if I could find this for a cheap price used, I would get it, because it was quite interesting that there's this Frankenstein's monster, or some kind of monster, that tries to catch you on the floor, and you have a group of these discs, and they are people. You try to move them through from this kind of a floor. It's kind of like a building or a maze or something, and you can move some objects, and you try to get from one end to the other end, and then the monster tries to catch you, and you can hide behind other players, and you can push them to places, and you can feed the other people's characters to the monster. And I didn't know that would I like this. I just wanted to try it. Yeah. Because I've seen it and never seen a physical copy of it. And I was surprised how much I liked it.
Okay.
And there was tension because the monster moved quite quickly online. So if you saw the moment when the monster moved, you were like really scared that is it coming to me or not, because it's a semi-random thing that how it moves, and it just went very quickly. I remember that I was almost scared when it happened.
Yeah.
And it was online, so that was interesting. And I want this game if I can get it for a proper price used.
I'm familiar with a lot of his games. I don't know that I've encountered this one, though. But if it's on Yucata, that's probably worth playing around with.
Yeah, it worked very well also.
Oh, that's good.
It's from 2003, I think. Yeah, should be. And it was surprisingly good.
Oh, excellent. Well, that's a good recommendation. I've written that down as one to explore.
Yeah, I think Eric Summerer is praising it in his top 10 lists that they sometimes make in the Dice Tower podcast. Sometimes every other week. no, every week actually nowadays when they make. But he's had it on many lists, and that's when I got intrigued by the game, and now I tried it, and I think it's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And it plays very quick.
Okay. Well,
also.
See, I've learned something. I'll have to go check that one out.
All right.
Well, so on to number 5. My number 5 is Last Night on Earth, the zombie game from Flying Frog Games. There are a ton of zombie games out there. You know, we talked about Dead of Winter. In my mind, Last Night on Earth is the best zombie game in the market. It is the most cinematic, like the experience of watching a dumb zombie movie. This is that. It is that that experience. It's not, you know, it's not a super complicated game. It's a very lucky game, but you're definitely going to have these experiences of, you know, being swarmed by zombies, trying to run building to building to be able to get some ammo for your gun, and then get some gas to get it to the truck and get out of here. I've got everything that's ever been made for it, and I still remember experiences of, you know, having my nurse character be surrounded by zombies, and she just ran into an area, drew every zombie to her, went down fighting with a chainsaw, while the rest of the team managed to escape. And she was overcome in the end, but sacrificed herself for the rest of her group. So these little narrative moments arise and stick out of it. It's silly, but it's just so good, and it's just so fun and accessible. And there's tons of expansions and tons of different ways to play the game. Every game you're going to have some kind of objective. We often just draw them randomly. Some of them are very simple, you know, kill 20 zombies. Some of them are very, very complicated. You have to go through these 5 or 6 steps before you win the game as humans. But it's easily the best zombie game out there. And of course, you know, the board's just filling up, and it's one person's playing the zombies, the other person is playing the heroes. It plays very well at 2 players. It plays very well at 4 to 6. Yeah, every player counts fine. I like it better at fewer players, where more people get to do things, and you play multiple heroes. But the board's going to just fill up with zombies. You're going to be rolling dice to try to get to that objective, and it's going to come down to, do I roll a 6? Do I roll a 1? And that tension builds up. And mostly I lose. I very rarely make it out as the heroes. A friend of mine is always the zombies, and I'm always the heroes. And I'm not very good at it, but I have so much fun every time I play it. So that's my number 5.
And that's important.
Yeah.
It's important to have fun. I haven't played this, but I think this might be a zombie game that I like the most, because Shaun of the Dead and such are quite stupid but funny movies.
Yeah. This invokes that 100%.
Yeah, that's what I've understood. My number 5 is a really, really long game and this is the second edition of Fury of Dracula.
Oh.
And I've played this as a Dracula. I've played this only once, but it was really tense, and I'm not sure if I want to play this again. And this is second edition. It is really long.
Yes.
Because if you're hiding well, it takes a lot of time. If you can't decide where to go because you're panicking behind your screen that doesn't exist in the game, then it takes long. This can freeze you really badly. And I think this is a great game, but it's too long. I should try the newer edition to see that if it's still as long. But I think they made it maybe too streamlined, because this was a good game, just too long. But this is definitely tense.
Yeah.
When the hunters are closing, you are thinking, don't block that road and don't go there on the way, and it's really interesting. But works well in the newer edition, I'm sure.
I have not played this, but my only experience of Fury of Dracula was at one of our RobCon cabin game weekends a number of years ago. We were at one table playing, I think it was Dominant Species, and another table was playing Fury of Dracula. And we played and completed Dominant Species and played another game. And that first group was still playing Fury of Dracula.
Oh dear.
And
that was a long one.
Yeah, and it was, you could tell by the end, everyone was just kind of tired of it.
Yeah.
They were just a little worn down. And I don't know, like, what was happening. I don't know if someone was playing good or playing poorly, or what exactly was causing the game to drag out. But it was long. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna give that one a pass.
Yeah, we played it with 5 players also. I think this would work the best with 3. So that both hunters would have 2 characters. Because 4 people making decisions, it just takes too long.
Yeah.
It's not worth it.
I think they played
But the new
5.
edition is faster, I heard.
Yeah.
And I've seen it played in 2 hours almost.
Okay. Well, that's good, because I know people love this, and people were super excited the new edition. I was just a little wary after that experience, so I've not dipped my toes into Transylvania yet.
Yeah, they changed the cheats into cards, and it's easier with the cards. You can just play the cards. You don't have to hide the cheats, because it didn't come with the player screen, and that's a bit problematic.
Yeah,
because you had to hold the small cheats in your hand and then choose from them, and it was a bit fiddly.
Yeah,
also.
I can imagine. Well, so my number 4 is Mansions of Madness, and this, I will say specifically, this is the second edition, not the newer app-driven edition, which I do like that game. But
isn't that the first edition? The one where you set up everything yourself.
Oh, is that the first edition? Okay.
Yeah.
I think I may be confusing it with Arkham Horror that had a previous edition before. So at any rate, in that case, the first edition, not the one immediately before the app one. I like the app game. It's a richer storytelling experience, and obviously you don't need to have the Nemesis player, but I like being the Nemesis, and I like knowing what's happened and watching the players trying to suss out the puzzle, and I don't mind the management of it, and I've always had a great time being on that side of the game and kind of being the puppet master bad guy. There's some certainly some pressure to make sure you set everything up right and put everything in the right place, and don't break the game on accident.
Have you ever made a mistake?
I don't. Not on Mansions of Madness, because I'm terrified of it. So I double and triple check, and I take it very seriously. And because I think I've pretty much always played the Nemesis. I don't know. I cannot recall a time when I wasn't. So I just love it. It's I think it does a fine job with building a narrative experience. It certainly builds. I think for me the tension part of it is as much being in the know and knowing what the heroes are trying to accomplish. And for me, the tension is, are they getting close and then trying to misdirect them or stymie them, but also not give away through your actions that maybe they're onto something, as the story builds up to try to fend them off. I'm sure the players have a whole different extension experience in terms of not knowing what's going on and that mystery unfolding. But I like being on that other side. I just like the, oh God, are they going to figure it out? Oh God, don't go in that room. Please don't, please roll the dice so the monster stops them so they run out of time, kind of thing. And Mansion of Madness it's absolutely one of my favorite games.
I think also I like the first edition more. I've only played it once, and I was the player, and it was quite fun. I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm not getting the similar feeling from the app-driven version for some reason. I don't know why. I liked it more, like there was someone you play against.
Yeah. That's what I liked about it. The app-driven version is great in terms of the richness of the story and the decision making. It does a lot more because it can branch in different ways, and it can randomize things about the setup that you just can't do with a completely analog game. And so I like it from that regard, but I think I like in the end the pure analog experience of the first edition of the game.
Yeah, it's the same for me. I somehow liked it more hanging around outside in that one.
Yeah.
Alright, now I remembered that I forgot one game, but it doesn't really matter. I'll say at the end what it is, but I forgot one that I could have added here. And my number 4 is Time Stories.
Oh, okay.
The first one, or the Expedition Endurance. If you want Lovecraft, you go for the Expedition Endurance, because that is like directly from this mythos tales.
Okay.
That you get some kind of sanity checks there and such. And the first one is quite creepy also, because you are in an asylum and try to escape. But I don't want to spoil anything in case someone hasn't yet played this. I don't really like the game anymore. I don't own this anymore. But I was so excited after 3 chapters, I think, because there were some parts of a main storyline and then they didn't continue it. So I quit playing after this Expedition Endurance. I just felt that, I don't know, I just don't want to play it. And also the people we played with, they moved away from this city, so we didn't have playing partners. We were playing with another couple 4-player games. They were really fun. And then we lost half of the group, so we didn't play 2-player. That would have been a bit silly.
This is, Rob and Christina have done quite a few of the Time Stories modules, and I've thought about borrowing it from them to play with Tara, because I think she would enjoy the mystery solving. And now my daughter too has recently gotten into kind of escape room and those kinds of games. So I've played it a little bit, but I never got into it as much as the other folks on the show have.
I think I've played 4 plus the main game, and they all have been a bit different in some way. But yeah, one of them expanded the main storyline behind everything a lot, and then they forgot it, and I don't really know. But I sold the copy and I don't have it anymore, so no regrets.
Yeah, well, those kinds of games, they have their time and then they move on.
Yeah,
it makes someone else happy.
Yeah, that's true.
So as we get into my top the top 3 here, I'm looking at realizing that each of the top 3 games all do something very different than the previous ones on the list. So I think that's probably why they rose to the top for me. So my number 3 is Dark Moon, the social deduction game. It's by far my favorite social deduction game. Obviously, you've got this creepy theme of the spaceship failing and the hidden aliens trying to destroy things. You know, it's got the same thing that every other hidden trader kind of a game has, but the theme is just much more creepy alien, and I think it pulls off the social deduction aspect better than other games I have played, because the way that it handles decision making and contribution to solving problems is through this hidden dice rolling mechanism where you roll dice behind your player's shield. You have to hope that no one at your table is a cheater, because that's the main flaw here. But you roll these dice behind your shield, and then you have to use those results to contribute to various things that are happening. Failures, the final, getting on the escape ship and getting out. But because it's this dice roll, it takes a little bit of the pressure off of having to be a really good liar, like a lot of social deduction games do. So you're stuck with the dice that you roll, and it does sometimes means that as a bad guy, you're going to have to contribute positively. It's not a choice you make. It's not you trying to be sneaky. It's just that the dice all rolled well, and so the only thing you can do is contribute positively. And on the same token, you could be a good guy and all your dice are bad, and now you've got to cause something to fail, and you're legitimately horrified that you have to do it. And so when you're defending your actions, you don't have to be a good liar because you really didn't want to do this thing. You're not, picking the bad card out of your hand and like, oh guys, it's the only thing I had. It really is the only thing you had. So I played this at all kinds of player counts. I played this with Tara and the kids. I've learned things about members of my family that were disappointing when I discovered how good of liars they were and how willing they are to murder you right out the gate. One of my favorite parts of the game, and this is my opinion of it. Other people certainly may disagree with me, but at higher player counts, you're going to have up to 3 aliens or 3 hidden traitors in the game. And one of the actions that the aliens can do is just reveal themselves as an alien. And in a high player count, I've always thought it makes sense for one of the 3 aliens just right out of the gate. The very first action they take is reveal themselves. Because as the aliens, you get a whole different set of actions that you can do for the rest of the game. You switch out your player board. You're now an alien player board. You're hiding in the ductwork of the space station so no one can lock you in jail. You just get to cause chaos. It doesn't make sense to do that if you're like the only alien or just one of the 2. But if you've got 3, someone can just go crazy, and it helps create cover for the other players, which again takes a little bit of the pressure off of having to be this pure. Does your personality lend itself to being good at social deduction? So that's my number 3, and the only social deduction game on the list.
I haven't played this, but I want to try it. It sounds really interesting because you can't really be good if you can't be good if you have bad luck. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, I just there are other games that have done that a little bit, but I just feel that Dark Moon does it the best of anything that I've played at least.
Okay. Stephen Bonacker praised it also when he was guest on this show.
Oh, okay.
I promised that I will try it. But let's see. I don't know anyone who has it, that's the problem. And it's not really that available in here currently, I think. I haven't checked, but I wouldn't buy it new, I would buy it used.
Yeah. Well, you maybe someday.
I don't, sorry.
Well, it's maybe out there somewhere, or I'll bring it to UK Game Expo next year.
Yeah, but I don't really like social deduction games, so that's why I wouldn't really buy it that eagerly, because probably it will go forward after playing a bit. I also want to try the thing that I might not like that either, but it sounds like something that I want to try once. And now I adjusted my list while you were talking. I switched a bit places because I noticed that the game on my originally on the first position I don't own anymore. So yeah, I actually knew, but I didn't pay attention when I was making the list. So my number 3 is a game that has basically tiles, and it has UV spotting on the tiles, and you can play it in the dark, and this is Subterra.
Oh, yes.
And I backed it in the original Kickstarter. It arrived, we played it 2 times in succession. I thought that this is too stressful, I'm selling it.
Yeah.
It was so stressful and so annoying and so difficult, at least how we played, and people were stupid. They didn't know how to play. No, not really, but it was really, really difficult. I noticed that this is not a game for me.
Yeah.
But it was really, really tense.
Yeah.
And the production quality is so good, and I really liked how the tiles were and everything. And it was sold out everywhere because it was quite soon after the Kickstarter, so I got more than I paid for it, so of course I sold it.
Oh,
and
nice.
That was a good deal. Yeah. And someone has fun with it, I'm sure. More than I would have had.
This is, I think Christina backed this on Kickstarter, and we played it. We reviewed it on the show not too long after the Kickstarter released, I believe. I think we had a similar experience. It ended up not being a game for us, and so it's went on to find a new home. But we constantly are amazed at what kind of following the game has. People absolutely adore this game, and I mean, and good for them, because it definitely is it's doing something that they love. But there is a huge fan base around this game.
Yeah, and very, very like fanatic fans, not fanatic, but they really love the game.
Yeah, the passion when we revisited it on our reroll, I think that was the main thing that we talked about was, you know, we had a little bit of trouble bringing it, getting it back to the table after our original plays. So when we were very surprised when we were doing research, like, oh my God, there's forums and discussion groups and fan groups, and people just are all over themselves for this game. So, you know, we missed out on something, apparently.
I don't know either. It wasn't the game for me.
Yeah. Okay,
but
well,
at least I've rated it 7, you've rated it 3, and Board Game Geek, so
yeah,
you're in my Geek Buddy list, so I checked
if
you've rated it.
Yeah, like I said, we weren't really a fan. I can see what people liked about it, and I can particularly see if, you know, maybe you have a relatively small library, or your experience with gaming is relatively minor. This game does a lot of Subterra. It does things that I think other games do better, but this packages so many neat things in one box where I could see how someone would be perfectly happy and would get a lot out of just having this game without having a huge library of stuff.
Yeah, and it looks really good and plays really smooth and everything, but it was just too punishing and too difficult, and something wasn't matching my taste, at least.
Well, my number 2 is actually in a little bit of that same space, because my number 2 is Nyctophobia. So this is the game you play, or well, most people play with a blindfold by touch. And specifically the one that I have and have played is the Nyctophobia Vampire Encounter. There's 2 different versions out there where the villain plays a little bit differently. This is a title that, much like Mansions of Madness, I've always been the nemesis character. So I've always run the game, for lack of a better phrase, and play with my kids. It was a featured review on the show, I think 2 years ago. And if folks have listen to Blue Big Pink Pig, they'll know I loved it. Rob absolutely hated it. It wants to have nothing to do with this game. For some of the reasons that I think that you described with Subterra, he was blindfolded. The tension level is just so incredibly high because the way that it works is you've got basically a forest maze on the board, and everything's very tactile. So you know where you are by the person running it. The nemesis will put your finger on your character, and you can then move your finger around orthogonally the space that you're in and make some decisions about moving. But one of the rules is if you touch the vampire, you take damage. And it doesn't take very much before you're dead. And if someone's dead, the game's over. So the very act of you're blindfolded, your finger's on this thing, you're trying to remember, how did I get here? You're doing a map of this maze of a forest that you're working through, and your objective is generally you're trying to find a friend, find them elsewhere in the forest, and then get back to the car. So you're going out to a space somewhere through this maze of these trees, and you do that only by touching. And if you touch the wrong thing, you may die. And then of course you're blindfolded, so you're trying to remember the board. And further, this is what I like playing as the bad guy. The vampire, for example, can make the tree shift around. So you might, what you remembered is the board. You move your finger expecting to feel nothing there, and then suddenly there's trees there, and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? Did I forget something? Did something move? So this is definitely, the tension is incredibly high in this game. Everyone is terrified. You're terrified to move. The reason it's probably not number one in terms of this theme is that the memory aspect of having to remember where you are or where you're trying to go. I had one game where a person they didn't have that sort of spatial ability. So they literally spent the whole game walking in circles around the car.
Ouch.
Because every turn they'd kind of forget where they were the previous turn. So they'd make a move.
That might have been a great experience.
Yeah. So I was kind of amused watching it because they thought they were exploring all over the place. Like, no, you never left the car. You literally walked in circles for the hour and a half that we played this game. And like, is the vampire, one of the things you get to do is the cards will tell you to whisper to someone the vampire is near. And I think Rob almost punched me because
I remember. Yeah, I remember hearing that.
I came up behind him. He's got a blindfold on. He didn't know I was there, and I whispered in his ear, "The vampire is near," and he freaked out. He's like, "I don't like this. I do not like this game." So, at any rate, but I think it's a remarkable experience, and of course, it has a remarkable story in that the designer designed the game because her uncle is blind, and she wanted to play games with her uncle, and so designed it a fully tactile game, which I think is just a pretty remarkable story. And I don't know that I'll ever play the game again. I don't know that I'll be able to ever trick someone into playing it with me, but it's still on my shelf.
Yeah, I haven't even seen a physical copy of this.
Oh yeah,
I've seen pictures and I've seen it on the web pages for sale, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's good.
I wouldn't try it with random people.
Oh,
That's
no.
what I'm sure of.
Yeah,
and I might want to be the villain instead of the blindfolded person. I don't really like that kind of stuff, being blindfolded.
Yeah, I've never sat in that chair, I will say that. So my experience of the game is purely from being the villain and watching the tension and horror mount on the faces of my players.
This game needs lots of trust within the group.
Yes.
And also, it has to be a safe place for everyone where you are playing.
Yeah. I mean, it does require touch. So that I would not go to a convention, I think, and just play this with random people. Yeah.
Especially nowadays.
Yeah. No, I don't think that's a good move. But and even so, some people don't like being touched. So this is not going to be a good experience for them, and I would not recommend it for them. You have to really commit to being touched, allowing people to maneuver your hand to places, and everyone has to be incredibly comfortable with that. And that's again probably why it's not in the top spot. There are some downsides in terms of access to a broad audience.
All right. My number 2 is very tense game that is really difficult also most of the time, and this is Ghost Stories. And this has horror theme, at least. It has ghosts.
Yeah.
And this is on the second spot. I mean, this is this high because you might think at some point that you are doing well, but then you get more of these ghosts, and they they create some kind of combo with each other that make you in a really bad position during one round of the game. You always have to be careful what is happening and what will happen, and you have to be able to react very quickly to things. And this is really interesting. I mean, you can't relax for even one turn in the game.
Right.
And this is really tense game in my opinion, and fits the theme also.
This is when Patrick played this years ago, and basically, said everything you did. He had a great time, but it was so hard and so tense, and things could turn so well. He talked me out of any interest in it because of that. Although he was very fond of it, he spoke very highly of the game. But that seems to be a very consistent reaction to it.
I'm actually not sure if I still own this or not. I have listed it as owned on Board Game Geek, but I might have sold it to a friend of mine. And this is probably his favorite game of all time.
Oh, yeah.
Second favorite or something. So it went to a good home if I did. Now I don't remember. I should keep record a bit better on Board Game Geek.
Well, we'll say that you did. That's a better story. It ended up in the right home.
You can play this as an app, and I will play it as an app in the future. So if you want to try it, you can try it as an app.
Okay.
It has less setup and less playing around with the cards also.
Right. And
much easier to play.
Okay.
All right.
Well, I guess we move on to our number ones then. So my number 1 is Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space by Osprey Games.
And this is the game that I forgot from my list.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yes.
This is it's in my top 5 of my top 50 board games of all time. So apart from its theme, I think it's a great game. It is the game that converted me from my absolute loathing of hidden movement games. One of the reasons that I would not have played Fury of Dracula is I just never liked hidden movement games. They did not appeal to me at all. And then I played this and just adored it, as Patrick would say. I've played it with all kinds of people. I brought it to just random game days and played with big groups of strangers. The rules are so straightforward. There's a lot of variety in the spaceship, the different kinds of spaces that you can play in. It's very quiet, and it's very tense, and everyone's looking at each other, and everyone's looking for clues. And every time someone flips that card over and they make that announcement of noise in sector whatever, or no sound, everyone's jotting things down, and their brains are working. one of my favorite moments, and a game is always gonna rise to the top if I can say that. If I can say my favorite moment, like if there's something that just happened that resonates with me forever. So this is years ago we were playing this, and over the course of the game, pretty much everyone had been turned into aliens. So by the end of the game, we were down to one human who was making his way to the escape pod, and everyone else was aliens, and we basically all knew where everyone was, and there was like one path to get to the escape pod, and it was almost like watching blips on a radar of his little blip moving to the pod, and then the next blip, a bunch of aliens are slightly closer, and then he moves forward, and then everyone's slightly closer, and you just the tension in the room of him going, oh my god, please, like, don't draw a card that forces me to say where I am, or I've got to keep him guessing just to see if I can get there. And then we're all coming from different directions, we're swarming, we're getting close, we just need him to draw one bad card until the moment I think we did stop him, like one space away from getting into the escape pod and winning the game. But those last turns were just amazing. Like, everyone was so into it, and like we just absolutely in that moment, our heart rates were up as we're waiting to see, are we going to get him? What's his next card draw? Breath's going, and it's just a fantastic experience. Just I cannot say enough good things about this game.
Yeah. I don't like the game that much. I sold my copy, but it was so tense. It's a fine game, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah.
But it's really tense.
Yeah.
It's really deservedly on the list. It would have been on my list also if I had remembered.
Yeah.
It would have been maybe fifth or even fourth. This is really, really, really tense.
And this was what I think Patrick gave this one to me, because I never would have sought it out, and he gave it to me and recommended that I give it a try, and we played 4 people or something like that, and it's like, this is fantastic.
Do you have the Osprey Games edition, the deluxe one with the removable? Yeah. That's a really good production also.
Yeah,
I think the first version was some kind of nonsense paper pencil thing.
Yeah,
I haven't played the earlier one either.
Yeah, I've got the whiteboard and the whole thing, and we've never there's unique player powers that you can play with, but honestly, I enjoy just the purity of the straight up aliens trying to do this, people are trying to do this. I don't want to worry about. I don't need that. Often in a game, I'll get to the point after the first play. It's like, okay, let's bring in those other optional things. But I've never felt the need for that with Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space. I think it's perfectly great on its own.
That might have been the mistake that I made. That we began playing with those powers. We didn't want to play without them, and that might have made it too convoluted and not as smooth as possible.
Yeah, I feel like that's the risk, but I haven't done it, so I may do it and decide I've made a mistake all this time. But at any rate, certainly it's not for everybody, but I've had a great time with it.
Yeah. My number 1 has been validated by some choices on your list, and this is Battlestar Galactica. This is not necessarily horror, but it has aliens and it has walking toasters, and this is really, really tense. I mean, I don't think I have played even one game of this where there hasn't been a lot of tension. In every time there is this crisis card, and you open the skill cards one by one, and then it either goes over or goes under. And I've never played it without this other treachery cards that give you minus. They come in some expansion in Pegasus and Daybreak. I've always played with the newer version of those, so from Daybreak, and they make it really tight, these crisis tests, and this is really good game. I will never play just the base game, because that feels like not complete game, because I played with the expansions and I have the full set on the shelf. I'm not yet selling it.
Yeah.
It's not high enough price, but they're going really expensive already. It's hundreds of euros, at least in Finland, the full set. But this is fantastic. You take something from each expansion and then you're set.
So, Dark Moon began its life as a Battlestar Galactica light or something.
Yes.
And so it is just that concept rethemed. And I have played Battlestar Galactica, and if I had thought about it in these terms, it probably would have made the list. Because I absolutely agree. I've had an amazing time. I'm a big fan of the Battlestar Galactica show anyways, so I like the IP. But I have played it a couple times. I think I've only played the base game. But it's just a fantastic experience. I love the threat of having to switch roles in the middle and finding out you were a Cylon the whole time. And now your loyalties have changed, but you've got to pretend they have it, and just those little twists make it from beginning just a great experience.
Yeah. Base game is fine if you haven't played with the expansions at first, but the first game I played was with every expansion, and there was something from everything. It was a test game for the owner of the game.
Oh, okay.
He wanted to try the newest expansion and the newest roles, and we played with the silent leaders, and there was lots of different things, and these are kind of like one series is one season. So the first season of the TV series is the base game, and the second season brings you the Pegasus. Then there's the Exodus that you're drifting around, and then the last one you reach the Earth. And I really love the series. They are really good. I'm wanting to watch them again.
Yeah.
A third time already. But it's one of the best series. Although there is some stupid stuff when they are on ground in that some kind of camp on the second season that was very, very boring.
Yes.
And that's a very, very boring part of the expansion also. Never play with that.
Oh, really? So that's included.
Yeah. Everything is included from the series.
Well,
with the last expansion, you get the new target. You get target to Earth, because first you have to go to Cobol with 8 jumps, if I remember, and then you need 10 jumps to Earth, and it gives you the silent leaders, and the silents are in a way working with you or against you, and it's really, when you have all the expansions, you have complete mechanisms for these treachery cards and the silent leaders. And that is really good. And the third expansion has this Cylon fleet. You have put another board where the Cylon ships are, and that whole fleet will catch you every time you jump, and you have to get rid of them. You don't lose them by jumping. You have to fight them, and that is really kind of a convoluted but very, very good full experience. I really love it like that. But I haven't played this for years, so it's a bit pity.
Yeah, I think it's similar for me. It's been a couple years. It was like a grail game for me to get to the table, and I finally got a chance to play it, and I've never got a chance to play it since then. But just a lot of fun. A blast to play with folks.
Yeah, takes a bit long, but I don't care. It's like Arkham Horror. You have to make it an event.
Yeah. I don't think I notice. I'm just enjoying, sussing out Cylons or trying to hide my Cylon-ness.
Yeah, and you always have some story to tell from every game.
Right.
If nothing else, then you see Baltar on the ship and want to throw him out of the airlock.
Right. Exactly.
All right. What do you think? Because these lists will go in a battle to Instagram and Twitter. What do you think? Do you have chances of winning the battle, or do you think that we will be even, or do you think that I have no chance?
I think I don't have a good sense of it. Like I have to say, I don't think you gave yourself enough credit in terms of playing in that theme. So you definitely had some in there that I hadn't thought about, and reminded me of some games that I have that I didn't really think of in those terms. So I think what'll be interesting, of course, is that some of our choices appeal to very different people. I think there's
definitely
there's potentially some consternation in making those choices. So it'll be interesting to see how they play out. I always just put it this way: I'm not putting any money on this contest. I'm not confident enough in either direction to bet on anything.
Yeah, that's true. They're really different lists in my opinion.
Yeah, I think so.
Although similar, we have no crossover. I think no, we don't.
Mm-mm.
A bit similarity.
Well,
you have Dark Moon, I have Battlestar Galactica, and I have Subterra, and you have Escape from Aliens. They're basically a bit similar. I think that they have a similar feeling, especially when the horrors come in Subterra. You try to avoid them,
right,
as you would as a human in Aliens in Outer Space.
Yeah, and I think if you had been able to bring in the Mansions of Madness and Arkham Horror, we definitely would have overlapped in that regard.
Yeah. Have you played Xenoshift?
I haven't. I think I've actually got the Steam game of it, but I've not. I think I got it in like an Asmodee bundle, so I have never played it. Either the digital I have or the analog game.
That's one of the biggest surprises I had last year because it was so good. It is really tense, and it's like Starship Troopers, the card game.
Okay.
It's really, really surprisingly good. Very ugly looking aliens coming to eat you, and the thing with that is you can play to your friend's table. I mean, it's a cooperative game, and if the other player gets an attack that he or she can't defend, and you have some kind of a bomb in your hand, you can play that there. I mean, you can really help the other directly, and you can play troops on the other's table, but then of course that goes to their deck, so you don't get that back anymore. But you can really cooperate and help to mitigate the bad draws, because some of the aliens that come there are really, really difficult.
Yeah,
they're really bad.
Well, yeah, this is good to know because I've got the game on Steam, so I've just never really played around with it. But this is a good impetus for me to revisit it.
Yeah, I think you might like it if you like cooperative card games.
I will give it a look.
All right, now you have two, Freers and Floors and Xenoshift.
Yep.
But that would have been really high on my list also, if I was able to use it, because it's really, really tense.
Okay. Well, I'll come away with some new games to play. Hopefully we'll hear about them on the show. We'll see if I like them as much as you do.
Yeah, I hope so. You might or you might not. I don't know. You're so much story driven. It seems to me that you might or might not. It's really difficult to know.
It's. I have been surprised at games that I would have thought I would have hated, and I end up enjoying. Escape the Aliens in Outer Space as an example. And then there's games I have every reason to like that I've just could not get into. So it's just like, I guess it depends on how good of the designer or what I'm feeling that day, or who knows what goes into it.
Yeah, but that's the great thing, that people have their own opinions,
right,
and are able to say them.
Right.
So everything is not good.
Yeah.
And you don't have to agree with everything, and that is great.
Yeah, I'll tell you one of the humbling things, and you probably have the same experience doing a podcast, is that we'll talk about something and feel pretty confident about our sense of it. I think we try to not say something is good or something is bad, but we are often pretty surprised at how wrong, quote unquote, we'll get something that we didn't like or didn't get or legitimately thought was not a strong game, to discover that everyone else in the world just absolutely loves it. So there's Yeah, it's whatever makes you happy, whatever you have fun with is a good game.
Yeah, that's true. And you're not wrong. It's your opinion. You are correct in your opinion always.
Yeah.
And as long as people understand that we are all humans and all our opinions are subjective,
right?
Especially if we tell that we like the game for that reason or we hate the game for that reason.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like Great Western Trail, but I understand that it's a good game for someone.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a bad game. It's just totally not a game for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, we have a wealth of riches in the board game world that it would be a shame if everyone liked the same game, because there's so many games out there that you're going to find something that makes you happy, that you enjoy playing.
Yeah, and you can't play everything. It's not possible.
No.
You can't play all the games from this year maybe in your lifetime.
Yeah.
Unless you're Tom Vasa or some other crazy person who just plays. Yeah. Not that Tom is a crazy person, I mean that who plays too many games. But but it's really difficult. There are so many releases every year.
You've got to make choices. And there's no reason to play something you don't enjoy just because someone else likes it, because there's no reason to do that. There's something else out there that you'll enjoy more.
Yeah, unless you're in my game group, you have to try these games once that I want you to try.
Yeah, all of our friends, there's something about being the friends of a group of podcasters, because I think people would enjoy getting to play the same game more than once, and we're always dragging people into learning new games and playing new games. And sometimes I'm sure it gets exhausting.
Yes, definitely, but that's what it is.
Yeah.
Some of my game group will listen to this, so they know that they have to play once.
Yeah.
They are victims.
Sticking with the theme.
Yes, definitely. Hidden movement next.
Well, that's those creepy elves.
Yeah, that's true. And that's true. Anyway, thank you for joining us, Jeremy. And if people want to find you, where can they find you, or where should they try to find you?
So, if you want to find the podcast, the best place to go is bluepigpinkpig.com, or Instagram, social media, Twitter, Facebook. Just look up Blue Pig Pink Pig. We're out there. If you're interested in what specifically I have to say, I'm not sure that anyone in their right mind should be, but I am on Twitter. You can find me at Piranoir, and I'll spell that because it's a weird word, but at Pyranoir. It's my Twitter handle from before I joined the podcast, so I just stuck with it. But I'm there talking about board game stuff and family stuff, and you can see pictures of the greenhouse if that is the thing you care about.
They do. Yeah, but thanks again for joining me, and bye.
Thanks. It was a great time. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. You can find this podcast from SoundCloud with username Mitapelataan. You can also find the podcast from Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Should be in Amazon Podcasts also at some point, and it should be found anywhere you listen to your podcasts. You can find me from Instagram and Twitter with username Mitapelataan. There's a page in Facebook, Mitapelata, and you can just search by Mitapelataan and you should find me from many places. I have a blog, mitapelataan.wordpress.com, where you can find information about this channel and all the links to related media. You should be able to find me from YouTube as well by searching Mitapelataan. You can send me email to mitapelataan@gmail.com. There's also a guild in Boardgame Geek, number 3320. Interact in any way you can, comment, anything, up to you, but interact with me please. And if you listen this far, please leave a review, subscribe so that people find out about this podcast. And one more time, thank you for listening, and bye bye. The music used in this series was Nightwalker by Sentient Pulse. Thank you for that. So this time the top 9 list is horror games, quite suitable for the year.
Yes.
The theme was horror, creepy, or tension. I wrote down.
Yes.
Is that true? And why? Why in the world did you choose that kind of a topic?
Well, yeah. So for what it's worth, that is kind of the theme that I worked with that we discussed was, yeah, I wanted to think about games that have the horror themes or games that build some sense of tension or dread, and like I'm a fan of horror fiction, scary movies, and I think that it can be a cathartic experience to face down fear, creepiness.
Do you still hear me? I don't hear you.
Your own terms. So I think that horror is just a theme I've always enjoyed. Those who listen to our podcast know that I'm also a gigantic H.P. Lovecraft fan, and anything having to do with Cthulhu and the mythos and so forth, I'm all in on, and so that's a theme I'm pretty familiar with. But yeah, I mean, 2020 has been kind of a horrific year, so we might as well play some games about horror and take a little bit of control over that, I guess.
Is it my internet or yours? It's not mine, doesn't look like that.
Oh
no. Maybe you got the Doomsday.
Hey, are you there? Oh.
Maybe else.
Hello?